The Zorkai had conquered 37 systems without resistance worth remembering. Precision, efficiency, and cold logic made them unstoppable. Organic species crumbled before the might of their fleets, their rituals and traditions nothing more than primitive distractions. And now they watched Earth. Their observation vessels hovered in silent orbit, unseen, analyzing broadcasts, historical footage, and the strange behavior of this bipedal species. One thing stood out. Before every major battle, be it in ancient dirt fields or spacefaring engagements, humans ate together. Lavishly, celebratorily. It wasn't sustenance. It was ceremony. Commandant Vectel, supreme strategist of the Zorkai Armada, reviewed the data with quiet disdain. Humans gathered before battle, sharing roasted meats, fermented drinks, and conversation thick with emotion. Some prayed, others joked, many cried, and always they feasted. Vectel's voice hummed in the command chamber. They ritualized food before combat. A species ruled by instinct, not reason. The analysts confirmed, from the ancient Greeks to orbital jump troopers of the Mars colonies, the pattern repeated. War followed food. Violence followed intimacy. Every time it made no sense. Why slow the engine of war with social bonding? Why dull the edge of aggression with ritual? The Zorkai logged it as a flaw. On screen, Earth soldiers in muddy uniforms clinked canteens before storming enemy lines. Tribal warriors painted their faces and roasted animals beneath the stars before ambushes. Even naval officers aboard deep space vessels upheld the tradition. Feast before the fire. One translated phrase read, to the Zorkai it was biological weakness. This dependency on connection. This need to consume and commune. Efficiency required silence, precision, emotional detachment. Feasts were for lesser minds. They underestimated how far humans would go to protect those they shared their table with. As Earth's military power grew, so did the confusion. Humanity invested in diplomacy, exploration, art. They built peaceful colonies, offered alliances. And yet, behind every peace gesture stood a culture that celebrated war. Not with banners or propaganda, but with food, laughter, and unity. Vectel's final assessment was clear. They disguise fear with tradition. They are not warriors. They are sentimentalists. He gave the command to proceed. Earth would fall quickly like the others. No Zorkai challenged it. They had never seen humans fight after the feast. Not yet, and so they missed the truth. The feast was never a distraction. It was not a farewell to life, but an oath to purpose. Not weakness, but permission to become monsters in defense of kin. The humans who rose from the table were not the same who sat down. Something inside them shifted. The food, the laughter, the shared silence. It forged a collective will that no data analysis could chart. But in orbit, the Zorkai believed they had seen everything. Believed they understood the strange custom. They logged it as a cultural anomaly, a minor curiosity, and made the worst assumption a conqueror can make. They mistook meaning for madness. They mistook unity for vulnerability. And they mistook the feast for weakness. They called themselves the 13th Legion. Veterans, outcasts, idealists, humans forged in war but grounded in something deeper. Stationed on Mars, their orders were simple: hold the line. The Zorkai fleet had entered the system. Impact was inevitable. But tonight, they weren't checking weapons or running drills. Tonight, they cooked. Portable burners hissed in the Martian dusk. Vacuum-sealed meat strips were grilled until the scent filled the air. Rations were swapped for real food, smuggled spices, ancestral recipes, and bottles passed hand to hand. A meal wasn't just tradition. It was armor for the soul. Sergeant Alana Voss stirred a pot, scarred hands moving with practiced rhythm. Across from her, Lieutenant Mora carved a chunk of synth beef with a combat knife. They said little. They didn't have to. The feast wasn't about words. It was about the unspoken. Commander Elias Silva stood at the center of it all, arms crossed, watching his soldiers. He'd seen it in every campaign. No matter the planet, no matter the tech, humans always returned to this. A meal, a gathering, a reminder. He raised his cup. Tomorrow they'll bring fire. They'll bring precision. They'll think we're weak because we eat before the storm." He paused. No one interrupted. "But this is who we are. We laugh before we fight. We remember who we are so we can remind them who we'll become." No cheers, no chants, just solemn nods and raised glasses. Because every soldier there knew this might be their last supper. Each bite was heavy with memory. Some thought of home, others of friends buried on foreign soil. Some simply closed their eyes, savoring the taste. Not of food, but of unity. It wasn't about hunger. It was about the bond, the transformation. Silva's voice returned, softer this time. "The Zorkai think we eat because we're afraid. They're wrong. We eat because we're human, and they don't understand what that means." Stories were passed like salt. Someone recalled the Spartans feasting before Thermopylae. Another spoke of Norse warriors toasting before sailing to their deaths. A young private shared how her grandfather, a World War III Marine, shared chocolate with his unit minutes before storming a bunker. It wasn't about strength. It was about meaning. The food was sacred because it marked the line between life and battle, between who they were and what they were about to become. The stars above shimmered, hiding the predator fleet inching closer. But the 13th didn't look up. They looked at each other, faces lit by firelight, eyes hard with quiet understanding. When the plates were empty, no one moved. For a moment, time held its breath. Then Silva spoke once more. "We're not going to fight because we have to. We're going to fight because we chose to. And they're going to learn what it means to feast before fury." No war cries, just a quiet standing of soldiers, one by one, as if answering a call only they could hear. The feast was over. Now the real ritual would begin. The Zorkai descended with mechanical grace. Drop pods pierced the atmosphere in perfect formation. Every platoon synced, every maneuver calculated. No emotion, no hesitation, just execution. Mars shuddered under impact. Within moments, the first wave of Zorkai soldiers breached the outer rim of the human compound. Their scanners reported low activity, quiet, dark zones. No heat signatures, no defensive fire. Then came the music. From hidden speakers embedded across the terrain, an old Earth war chant boomed through the dust. Drums, voices in languages the Zorkai couldn't translate. Rhythms that made something primal twitch in even their emotionless minds. Then came the humans. They moved with terrifying precision. Not the cold, mechanical kind the Zorkai prided themselves on, but fluid, wild, unchained. The 13th Legion emerged from cover like ghosts, blades drawn, guns hot, screaming names of comrades and cities and ancestors. The feast had melted their fear. What remained was fury. Zorkai lines faltered. Data feeds lit up with warnings. Increased human aggression beyond projected threshold. Unstable behavioral patterns. Tactical retreat advised. It didn't matter. Humans didn't fight for objectives. They fought for each other. Sergeant Voss led a charge through a plasma barrage, face painted in ash, laughing as she tore through enemy ranks with a vibroaxe. Lieutenant Mora took a hit to the arm, wrapped it mid-run, and fired 3 rounds into a Zorkai commander's skull before collapsing behind cover. They were outnumbered, outgunned, and somehow still gaining ground. A captured Zorkai later stammered in a debrief. They were smiling, bleeding, singing. The data confused Commandant Vectel. The humans were supposed to break. They were supposed to run when logic dictated. But logic had been left at the table, along with fear. Their neural readings spiked in ways the Zorkai had never seen. Endorphins, adrenaline, memory flashes. Their minds weren't breaking. They were becoming something else. Something more. Zorkai soldiers began to hesitate. Every time a human fell, 3 more pushed forward. When pinned down, they advanced anyway. When cut off, they fought harder. It wasn't strategy. It was conviction. It was madness that made sense only to them. Surveillance drones captured scenes that chilled analysts. Humans dragging wounded friends to safety while laughing. Others whispering farewells mid-charge. Some, just staring down death with empty bowls hanging from their belts like medals. The feast had done something. The Zorkai had no term for it, but they knew what they saw. Transformation. The battle stretched longer than any Zorkai campaign in a century. Their formations broke. Their precision crumbled under chaos, under purpose, under humans who had made peace with death the night before. Commander Silva's voice pierced through enemy comms in a hacked transmission. 7 words. No threat. No insult. You shouldn't have let us finish dinner. Then silence. And then, one by one, Zorkai ships began to fall from the sky. The Zorkai had never faced anything like this. Their fleets retreated into the void, but their minds were not at ease. They had underestimated the humans. The data was clear, but the truth had eluded them. Their cold, calculating minds couldn't comprehend the depth of what they had just witnessed. The Zorkai Council convened in silence, each member processing the reports with growing unease. Commandant Vectal stood at the head, scanning the footage of the battle, analyzing it again and again, searching for the flaw in their analysis. But there was no flaw. The humans weren't supposed to act like this. They weren't supposed to resist, let alone overwhelm them. They eat before war, Vectel said, his voice low, more to himself than to the council. They celebrate before they fight. They see death and do not shrink from it. They enjoy it. One of the senior analysts hesitated before speaking. We believed their rituals were distractions, emotional outbursts, a sign of weakness. And we were wrong, Vectel interrupted. His eyes glowed with a realization that chilled the entire room. They do not eat to indulge. They eat to prepare. The feast is a part of the war. It is a cleansing, a transition. They feast to bury their fear, to embrace the chaos. They give themselves permission to become monsters. The truth hit the council like a physical blow. The Zorkai had fought countless wars, each victory marked by cold precision. But humanity's rituals made them unpredictable, untouchable. They didn't fight out of necessity. They fought out of choice. They fought because they wanted to. And the feast, the bonding, the laughter. This was the moment they shed their humanity to embrace the savage warrior within. What do we do now? One of the officers asked, his voice thin with dread. They are relentless. Vectel turned to the holographic display, showing the wreckage of Zorkai ships scattered across Mars' surface. We retreat, for now, but we will never forget what we learned. These creatures do not fear death. They do not fear anything. The recordings from the battlefield played again, showing a human soldier, his comrades fallen around him, yet still grinning as he wiped blood from his face. A young private, shaking from adrenaline, but still laughing as he clutched his weapon. Their culture is a weapon, Vectal continued, his voice grave. The feast, it is their weapon. As the council absorbed the reality of what had happened, one thought echoed in their minds. This battle was not just lost. This was a massacre of the mind. The Zorkai had underestimated humans in the worst way possible. They had not only lost the fight, they had lost the war the moment they had misunderstood the ritual. They had seen food, they had seen weakness, but they had never seen humanity. And it was humanity, forged in unity, in laughter, in defiance, that would haunt their nightmares forever. They would never make the same mistake again. But by then, it wouldn't matter. The humans were already coming for them.